Hello, beautiful. And what I really want to know is what is good in your life today? I'm Kia, and this is another episode of the Female Veterans Podcast. Today, I have with me someone really, really special. And this year, the work that she's been doing really caught my attention. And I have been following her journey on Instagram as she advocates for female veterans. And you know that that's really close to my heart. So there's no way that I could not have her come on here and tell me her story and find out what propelled her into action. I think we know. But my guest today served 8 years in the Army, and her name is Lucy Del Gaudio. Lucy, welcome to the Female Veterans Podcast.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for coming. I appreciate you.
Thank you. I'm truly honored. Thank you so much and very humbled. Thank you so much for this.
Your advocacy work is just so impressive, and I just felt like we needed to connect and share everything you're doing with the Female Veterans Podcast community. So, our tribe.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, our tribe. The
That's
tribe
right.
is very, very deep and very strong. So definitely.
That's right. That's right. So tell me, what was boot camp like for you?
Boot camp was very interesting for me. So, I'm from Jersey. I'm from New Jersey. And I want to say I was kind of a little bit of a private Benjamin, let's so to say. I'm a city kid. I grew up in Hudson County, which is very predominantly very city structured, nothing suburban about it, right across the river from New York City. So you could just imagine what I stepped into when I stepped into Fort Jackson, South Carolina. I was like, whoa, this is going to be interesting because I had no idea what I was getting myself into. But really quickly, I want to say I started noticing how race played into the scope of my boot camp, the sexual innuendos, your appearance. At one point during basic, I kind of wanted to desexualize myself, I want to say. So I cut my hair really, really short. I kind of would wear multiple bras, so my breasts would go in. I tried to be more physically manly than actually like shapely like I was. So that's basically what basic was all about for me. But I did form one really positive bond in in basic with another one of my battle buddies, and again, that's the connection that I cherished for the rest of my life, for all my life.
Wow. So immediately for you, you have culture shock. Well, we all do, but I mean, that's a
Yeah.
big shock. I mean, if you're coming from South Carolina going to boot camp there, it's not as big as a culture shock as coming from like basically New York, like Jersey. So, I totally get it. And then you get there, and the first things you experience, it makes you feel uncomfortable to the point where you want to, like become masculine.
Yeah, I wanted to become masculine, and again, I always technically felt I was very a masculine type of person because I was always very physically fit, and I kind of have like these sharp features. I'm very like Taino looking, because I'm half Puerto Rican, and so women like femininity wasn't always I thought wasn't an issue for me, but when I got to the military, I definitely was a lot more feminine than I thought I was. So it was very interesting. It was a very interesting dynamic right away. I was like, whoa, you people are looking at me that way. And I guess, I don't know, again, I kind of was thrown into activity that I never had experienced, in my 18 years of life before that.
Well, so you went into boot camp in 1990, right?
Yeah,
So
1990.
it was a very different world. And do you feel like there were a lot, like for at your boot camp, where there are just so much more men than women that you felt such a difference in?
Yeah, we were still separated. I only did basic with women. And the
Okay.
only time I saw the males were when we went to church, like week three, four. So it was very unique. I mean, we would get a peek of them on the chow line, or if they were like we would run across them, doing PT, but we never actually participated in any activity together. The only activity we did, cohesively share a space with was in church. And for some reason, all of us went to church. It's funny. I was not a churchgoer till I got to basic training because I had a lot of praying to do. So definitely.
I definitely remember going to church in boot camp too, but it was a
Yeah.
little bit different for me because the guys were everywhere. So that's why I was asking, because in fact, I was in an integrated company. So we had guys that were in our company and our unit with
Yeah,
us.
I didn't experience integration until I got to AIT, and that's when I started integrating. But for boot camp, it was just about 68 women. That's it. You know.
Wow. And out of all of those 68, you left with one really good one.
Yes, I left with one really solid one that I still talk to,
That's
and
beautiful.
it's it was a great relationship because she got me through it because she was from the South. She experienced a lot of the fire ants issues and weather, and she experienced a lot of that. So she kind of held my hand. But on the other respect, she had never met anybody from the East Coast, so for her, I was like. I was
Yeah.
very unique in a sense because a lot of the things that the music I listened to, we talked about different, art and different things when we had our off time. And I was like it was like a yin and yang. We were so different, but yet we connected in such a level that it just made it really, she got me through boot camp.
Amazing. I love that. That's one of the reasons I asked that question, is because I'm always curious to see if any of the connections from boot camp survived, because I definitely made some close connections in boot camp, but none of those relationships survived to this day. So if any of you guys went through boot camp in November of 1994 and you're in the Navy, um, maybe reach out to me. Maybe we were in the same company. Anyway, but for sure, what was AIT like for you?
AIT was very, actually, it was a very safe place for me. I went through two AITs. My first AIT was in Fort Devens, Massachusetts. I went through military intelligence school. I was a Morse code interceptor. And that was a very positive experience for me. Again, a lot of East Coast folks. So I felt kind of connected, but I met a variance of people. So AIT was actually, both AITs were actually safe places for me where I didn't experience any type of biases. It was a very, very good, safe places. And again, a lot of, in especially in Fort Devens, I was so close to home. I was able to come back and forth to Jersey once in a while. So it was a really good place to be. And then after, when I turned into a 71 Lima, I got sent back to Fort Jackson for a really quick 71 Lima, 75 Bravo school, and went back to Germany. So it was interesting. But it was again a positive. AIT was an incredibly positive experience for me.
Wow, that's wonderful. So we all know what going to a good base can be like. Like, well, most of us know
Yeah,
that it makes such a difference when you're on a good base with good leadership, versus when you're on a base that has questionable leadership, and the energy, like the morale on the base, is more negative. It can just really turn the entire experience. So
yeah.
tell me, what was active duty like for you once you got there?
Active duty was interesting. It started very positive.
Hmm.
It was very again. I got to Germany. I was active right away to Germany, and started very positive. I was in a small concern in Hanau, Germany, and I met two of my closest friends. I'm still very close to them right now to this day, and it was again very positive. And then there was a change in command, and that's when things went different. So
Oh.
that's where my life changed a little bit in the course of action. And then what happened to me happened.
Okay. So, do you want to share a little bit more of your story so that we
Sure, sure. So
can get it?
I was assaulted by the person they had assigned to me to be my mentor. There wasn't a lot of my MOS in the units, the two units that I report to cohesively. And so they felt that this person could kind of take me under their wing and kind of guide me through the system, because I was very unique in the sense, because since I was an MI, I carried a lot of clearances that a lot of people didn't have. So for them, I was kind of a value because, again, I wasn't going through the whole clearance game. I already had them before I got there. So I was utilized in different capacities. I was very kind of multidimensional, let's say. And so they decided to put me under this person who I wasn't directly reporting to every day of the week, but he would come from Frankfurt to Hanau once in a while. We did a lot of talking on the phone at first. So it was very safe when it was in that environment. But then when he started coming to my actual unit, that's when I started seeing a little bit of a difference, because then, he actually saw me. And then it started, I could see the tension. It started feeling where I had this phone conversation with him, it was a safe place. But then when I actually started to engage with him, it started becoming incredibly uncomfortable. And the first episode that I felt a lot of uncomfort with him is, I don't remember if you remember the days when you would do PT and you would try to get your BMI measured. And for me, I never passed the weight. I'm sorry, I can't be 138 pounds at 5'5". It just doesn't work that way for me. My body doesn't carry my weight that way. So I was constantly measured, and the first sergeant was available to measure me, so he actually measured me, and that was the first time that I felt like, wow, he's really kind of making me feel uncomfortable.
Oh,
He kept
no.
on, doing the measurement over and over again, and as he would do it over, it became tighter and tighter. And that was the first time
Oh,
I
my
felt
God.
geez, I feel uncomfortable. And then things started to precipitate. I expressed that I really didn't want to. He wasn't making me feel comfortable. I expressed it to a few people in my unit, and then ultimately, he assaulted me. And then when I reported it 48 hours later, it was totally swept under the rug. And then, I became the unit problem. I was the belligerent, soldier. I was the soldier that was always problematic. Everything I said was a complaint. And then that's when I decided to try to manage my way out of active service, and I became a reservist. And that's what happened. And that's the way it played out. And the thing is, I know that nothing was done paper wise. I know that no reports were filed because I was the unit admin. So if nobody was going to take it, it would have to go to the hires B. And I know that that didn't take place. So, I came back stateside. They managed to get me someplace close to home. So I became a reservist in New York. And that was it. And then I kind of disappeared within the ranks. And I was an inactive reservist. I have to say, a lot of people didn't even realize that I was a reservist, because I just kept it so low key. And then in '98, when my time came up, and that's how I left. And then from '98 till about 2000, like 2010, 2011, if you asked me, if you knew me personally, you knew that I served. If you didn't know me personally, you were getting to know me, I wouldn't tell you that I served in any capacity, because it felt kind of gross. It was like a tarnishment on top of me. And that's what I perpetually kept on thinking, like, my service meant nothing. And then finally I met someone. I met a friend. I rekindled with a friend from high school who was still serving. He was a Marine, and he was like, Lucy, you should tell people your story. You're such a proud person. You should really. And I'm like, I can't identify that way. I don't feel like what I did merited anything. And he's like, no, it merited a lot. And
Yeah.
then little by little, I started kind of learning about different veteran VSOs, service organizations, and then little by little, I started realizing that I wasn't alone in this game. There was a lot of women like me. But also my first venture into advocacy wasn't in the military sexual trauma space. It was geared more through VA, the lack of VA services for women, and homelessness. That's where I really ventured into. So
Oh, I feel
that's
that.
that's how I started advocating. And then little by little, the military sexual trauma came out because I still wasn't healed. I never really addressed that that happened to me. So that's when I finally started taking care of myself because of my MSD, because I was finally diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder.
Right.
Then when I started to heal, then I felt like I could share my story with other people.
Wow. Oh my goodness. Girl, that's a lot. So let me back up just a little bit because I swear to God, Bible, that this never gets easier to hear. And I hear it so much, okay, on this podcast. Like so much that is alarming and disturbing. So let me just back up for a second, trying to wrap my mind around this. You were given a mentor, and this mentor was really cool at first until he saw you in person.
Hmm.
And then when he saw you in person, the harassment began and that led to the assault. Okay. So that's really creepy.
Hmm.
Um, so sorry that you had to experience that and endure
Re-
that.
remember, it's the remember it's the '90s. There's no social media, there's no cell phones, there's no FaceTiming, there's
Yeah,
no.
it's
I
a
mean,
different time
like
altogether.
email was dot. I don't know if you remember email systems. It was dot matrix. You had to cut. The email would
Yeah.
come in one long string of stuff, and you would have to cut it in half and things of that nature. So it was really realistically a whole different army and
Hmm.
a whole different military structure. So again, we would have these conversations, and it was a very safe space for me to have these
Hmm.
conversations because again,
Absolutely.
I was trying to gain a relationship with someone who was my mentor, who was
Yeah,
going
he's
to
supposed to be mentoring
he was
you. You
mentoring
need a
me.
relationship with your mentor. They're supposed to be
Exactly.
close, like amazing to
Exactly.
you.
And then boom, it just happened, and I was like, oh
Wow.
my god, so it was definitely.
So I guess my next question is how did you so I know you reported within 48 hours, which is amazing and brave and incredible. No matter what your choice is, whether it is to report or to not report because of whatever reasons you
Well,
have.
honestly, I had no other choice but to say it because my first sergeant, I wasn't showing up to work. And my first sergeant came to the barracks, and she came into my room, and she's like, "What the fuck? Why aren't you getting out of bed?"
Ah,
And because
okay.
I basically laid dormant for like 48 hours. I did not want to get out of bed. It was just like I felt like I was stuck to my sheets. And my roommate kept on going to me like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, just not feeling well. I just really can't deal with a lot of things right now. And then, she came in, and my first sergeant was female, and she's like, "What the fuck? What gives? Like, why the fuck are you still in bed?" And I was like, "I was assaulted." And she kind of looked at me, and she's like, "By who?" At first she was like, "By who? Like, who? We're going to get him, blah, 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 blah." And then when I said who it was, she's like, "What?" She's like, "Are you sure?" And I was like,
Are you sure?
Yeah, I'm sure." And then it turned into this. And then it was back and forth for a little bit. And then she's like, "You know what? I need you to go shower, get the fuck up, get dressed, and get to the office now." So I was like, okay.
Wow.
So I did my thing. I went to the barracks. Did what I had to do, went to the office, and then they were all waiting for me. All like the big wigs, because I reported to all of them. And then again, it played like, "Lucy, do you realize, he's been in the army for X amount of years, it could potentially be damaging." And I'm like,
Well,
"Oh,
yes, his
so
life.
here's little old PFC." So you
You
know,
don't matter. That's where it starts.
I don't matter whatsoever. But he, long-standing career,
Mm.
he has his tabs, he has all his shit.
Yeah, he's so
And
important. You're
excuse my
gonna ruin
French.
his life.
Yeah, I'm gonna ruin his life. But yet Lucy did not, sustain. And that's what I hate. And that's where I really
Agreed.
detest. I detest sometimes the military because of this toxic culture that they cultivate. And it's not just a male thing, it's a woman thing too.
Yes.
Because women could be as toxic as the male in this kind of story, in this story. And that's what made me so belligerent, because again, they saw me like change from this really like gun-ho, really trying to garner. Again, I was struggling with promotion because of my weight, and they always hung that weight on you
Hmm.
when you were trying to get promoted. And it turned into like, oh, are you they used that kind of against me, like, oh, are you mad that he's saying you're like, he won't give you the few pounds in order. And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute,
Wow.
like you really think this is what I'm trying to do? And I was like, whatever, folks, like, just let me do my time, and let me get the hell out of, let me just do whatever I could. But again, they made it so uncomfortable for me that I just gave up.
You
I
shut
just said, you know
down.
what, I totally shut down. And I became a really different person. And but then, like, mentally I was so messed up, like I just didn't know how to deal with it. And then I just, as soon as I got home and I got into US soil, I just completely unplugged completely.
Wow. So I can imagine everything that you must have been going through and why you would just gain such a distaste and distrust, for the system and for the what had happened to you, and why you would come back and then just sort of check out and be like, okay, I'm done. I'm washing my hands of everything military. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to think about it. No one's ever going to know that I served. Like, I'm going to go. I mean, when I left the military, I will say that I always say that my experience in the military was amazing until the day that it wasn't. Right? That's how it is for all of us, many of us, I should say.
Hmm.
And when I got out, I went very far in the other direction, and no one knew that I was in the military for a long time. I wouldn't tell anyone, and all of that. So I totally vibe with that. Like, I get that feeling. I didn't use services. I didn't go for benefits. I didn't do. I mean, there was a time where I was almost homeless. Like, I was 2 weeks away from being homeless on the streets, and
Hmm.
just God, the universe, whatever you believed in, came through, and my friends, and they helped me. And I still didn't go for services during that whole time, knowing that I was facing about to become homeless. I
Hmm.
didn't even go for services, didn't even think of it, didn't even cross my mind, because I was so far detached from having served. So I really get where you're coming from. My next question has got to be, because we talked more about you coming back and you, evolving into advocacy work, but you weren't even healed yet.
No,
So,
I wasn't. When I first entered the advocacy space, when like the veteran service organization space, I was not healed yet. I still was struggling. If you would have seen me, I was 289 pounds of struggle. I constantly ate. I was not a healthy person. And, I started a family, I got married, I also got divorced. And so I put everybody before me, and I still wasn't healing. And then finally I had a massive anxiety attack. I had just gotten married, my second marriage. I had a massive anxiety attack that actually hospitalized me, and they thought I was having a heart attack. And and it was funny, before I had the massive anxiety attack, for weeks I was struggling with like chest pain. I really wasn't feeling well. I was like constantly out of breath, and I was like, I don't know what's going on with me. And then, in and out, like I would go to the hospital because I was having chest pain. But then finally, I had this huge anxiety attack. So my husband takes me to the hospital, and it was the first time my husband decided to say to the physician's assistant, my wife's a veteran. And then that changed everything. And they came into my room. It was the doctor and the PA. They closed the door and they go, your husband shared with us that you're a veteran. And I'm like, and I was kind of surprised. I couldn't believe he actually said that. And then they go to me, did you have an experience while you served that possibly, you know, you haven't treated? And then that opened up
Wow.
this gamut. And then I realized that yes, I was dealing with post-traumatic stress and I wasn't dealing with it. And then I started services, and then that's when I started realizing that yes, I need to start healing. And then for a multitude of years I went the pills and treatment and therapy route. But then I noticed that even though I was somewhat healing, I wasn't really healing, because I still, I became very pill dependent. And when you become pill dependent, a whole host of other things start happening. So I became hypertensive. And then what really freaked me out was they told me I was going to become a diabetic.
Oh
And
my.
my grandmother, my abuela, who was she was basically raised me. She was insulin dependent. And I saw her, like I didn't want to become her. Twice a day she would have to inject herself, and I didn't want to become that. And plus, I have 4 children. I want to be here for my children. So I sat down with my husband and I said, something's got to give here. Like I really need to change this, because I'm really unhappy, regardless of all the therapy that I'm doing and all these VSOs that are claiming that they're making me happy and they're making me feel good. I'm really struggling. I'm really, really having a hard time. And he's like, well, why don't you go to the doctor, see what the doctor recommends? And then I started doing reading about like holistic practices, and my sister-in-law is a homeopath. So I said, you know what, maybe I could go that route. And I in one of the VSOs that I was in, I built this tribe of really solid people around me. So I started talking to them little by little, each individually and then all cohesively as a group. And I told them, hey, I think I want to venture into this direction. Would you guys help me? Because each one of you uniquely have what I need in order to become a better person. And they said yes. And then April, after meeting with the doctors, meeting with my therapist, and I said, I would like to become med free. How could I do this? And then, I met with the therapist individually, met with the doctors individually. They saw that I wasn't going to be able to do the weight, on myself. So I met with a team, and I decided to go bariatric wise. So I got the sleeve, and then as of April 7th, 2017, was the last time I took any type of med. And then the holistic practices started to come into place. And I started meditating, I started doing yoga. But my real catharticism was running. And that's how I started. But then I started realizing that I was actually structurally becoming just a better, peaceful person. And that's when I decided to advocate for military sexual trauma.
Wow. What a story. There's so many parts of it that I just want to dive into. Okay, so I love the fact that you just decided, look, this holistic approach is what I need to do in order to save my life. I can identify with that story because in 2016, I moved from the East Coast out to the West Coast. And this 3,000-mile drive that I had just gotten diagnosed with hypertension. And I was like, so my mother had hypertension and diabetes, my grandfather before her father. And I thought, oh my God, I've got to do something or I'm going to die. That thought was like on repeat on my head. I was on all
Yeah.
sorts of drugs and meds from the VA myself. And that drive coming over here was when I decided that I was going to go a holistic approach to treat myself. I was going to get off all meds and I was going to do the same process. So one of the parts of the Female Veterans podcast is I advocate for alternative medical therapies, things
Yep.
that are not mainstream, that you can try to help heal yourself or relieve your symptoms or pain. We've had several episodes about different things you can try. In season one, it was ketamine infusion. I think it was season
Hmm.
two that we did Sarah Ganglion Block with the hippie veteran, hippie and a veteran,
Yep.
Lauren. And we are talking about marijuana in season three.
Yep.
So like every season, I try to add something holistic for you to research, because what do you have to lose,
Yep.
right? If
Yep.
you're at the end of your rope,
Again, exactly. What do you have to lose? And again, I lost my dad died when he was 51 years old. My dad died right before
sorry.
I went into the military. My dad was an alcoholic. He abused drugs. He died of AIDS. And again, I want to be around for my children.
Yes.
My dad didn't see me gain, momentum. My dad didn't meet my kids. My dad didn't do a lot. And my dad meant, even though he was, he had his issues, my dad was my lifeline. And for me, I want to be around. I want to see my daughter's getting married next year. I want to witness that. I want to see my kids, become prosperous. I want a healthy marriage with my husband. I want those things. And again, if I continue the path that I wasn't going to see any of that, and I had all those things. I wanted relationships that I never had growing up. And I really wanted to be just structurally a better person. But when I started diving into what was going to be best practices for me, I dabbled in everything. I tried to, what's going to be the best practice for me? And again, meditation became something that I really thrived on. I didn't uniquely think that I was going to be able to do it, because everybody's like, Lucy, how do you meditate? I just can't clear. And like I tell people, everybody's meditation is different. And for me, it took me a deep dive into trying different meditative practices. And to me, that was it. Like, am I perfect? No, because I still overthink. I still have anxiety type of frustrations. I still once in a while feel depressed. It's not, it didn't make everything disappear, but I definitely know how to manage them better, because I meditate, because I do my yoga, because I go out running before. And also, I feel like I could talk to people better because I somewhat calmed myself down. So that, again, to me, that's my practice. Does it work for everybody? No. Someone else is going to say, like, I don't want to run 7 miles a day. Like, it doesn't, because if you would have met me, when I was in my heaviest, like, I would say running, like, are you kidding me? I'll wait for you at the finish line with some sort of beverage, and it's okay. You know what I mean? So for
Yeah.
me, again, that's what made me feel better. And that's my practice. And that's how I felt it. But one thing that it did do, I built this community around me that has been so incredibly supportive, because they are very like-minded like me, and they knew that I needed that hand holding, and they haven't let go. So it's, again, that's something that I can't stress enough. Build your tribe. It's very hard as adults to become friends of other adults. But I definitely found this, like, really great group of individuals that are just so amazing. And not all of them are veterans. Some of them are veterans. Some of them are veteran spouse. Some of them are veteran supporters. But they understood what I was coming from. They understood the language that I was talking. They understood the struggles that I was facing. And that just made life so much better for me.
That's beautiful. I gotta say, I mean, the healing journey, I don't think it ever really ends. We're always healing. So, like you said, it's a practice. You develop your own practice of what works for you. But you got to get out there and try stuff and trial and error until, you find the right things that work for you, like the right therapist. Maybe the first one you go to is not the right one. Maybe you got to go
Oh,
see
trust
three
me,
or four
I've
before,
gone through. Oh,
right?
yes, I've gone through like oh, next, next. Because
Mm-hmm.
either some of them just didn't like, again, you know how it is. You could find, when you find that right therapist, you're like, oh man, this is like magic. And that's what I've done. At this point, I have like I call her my magician because she's just like absolutely magical. And we have this really great relationship. And I'm able to talk to her in such a way that it just makes me, it's very comforting. And let me tell you, she's been on speed dial the last 90 days because I've been calling her a lot because, the work that we've been doing the last 90, some odd days has been very intense, and it has opened a lot of wounds that I haven't visited in a long time.
Well, I think you're doing such an amazing job on your
Thanks.
your your pathway to healing, and the fact that all of this, like, so you had the surgery that allowed you to get your weight under control, because sometimes you just need a little help. Okay.
And people are like, oh, Lucy, that's the easy way out. No, it isn't. Let me tell you
No,
something.
surgery is
Because
never easy.
the surgery is not easy, but also the maintaining is very, very difficult. And again, I know myself. Like, I know that if I'm having a rough day, I want to hit that bag of Doritos. And where before I used to hit the big bag of Doritos, now I'm hitting a smaller bag of Doritos. So
The
I
little
know,
changes.
yeah, there's just little changes, but it's very difficult. But one thing that I have been able to do is I kept on that continuum of, again, I built this regimen that has just worked for me. So some days it's the running regimen, some days it's my yoga regimen, some days it's my, just like a cardio type of regimen. But there's always some sort of exercise. And is it a walk? Is it a something? But I built this regimen that has just really worked for me. So.
Oh, that's beautiful. And I love that you meditate. I am a huge meditator. I try to meditate. I have a big practice. I try to meditate at least once a day,
Mhm.
nearly every day. And I'm a work in progress too, right? And so, but I do definitely feel you on sometimes, you think, sometimes people don't realize prayer is a meditation. There's all sorts of
Yep.
ways to meditate. Sometimes you have guided meditation is actually what helped me get started. Listening
Mhm.
to someone guide me through a meditation was like a beautiful thing for me for years. The only way I could meditate. And now I study with like a Zazen teacher. So I studied Zen meditation and I'm becoming Zen. Let me tell you, it
Yes, yeah,
works. So yeah.
for me, it was very interesting the way I got into meditation. So I had tried a meditation class that showed us three different types of meditation, and I was like, okay, this is good. And it was kind of doing the whole apps thing and stuff like that. So I was at my son's wrestling match, and I had my iPad, and in the iPad, I was looking up different meditation, and the parent behind me goes to me, Lucy, I don't mean to like look at what you're looking at. He goes, but I see that you're looking at some meditation. I'm like, yeah, trying to, see if I could work on my meditation. And he goes, my daughter works for the David Lynch Foundation. And I said, really? And he goes, yeah. He goes, would you like me to connect you to her? She might help you. And I said, why not? So I connected with her, and she's like, oh my God, we have this great program. There's two programs that would really be great for you. They have a women's program, and then they have a veterans program. So maybe you could take a deep dive into that. So I tried both, and that's where I found my connection. So I went through the David Lynch Foundation, absolutely loved it. It was really, it changed my life. And then there is where I started learning what practice was going to be. They're very big into the transcendental meditation, but for me, it was more of a movement meditation. And that's what I kind of like, in the mornings when I wake up, I do my meditation. It could be as small as 5 to 7 minutes. I've gone some deep diving because sometimes I wake up and I'm like, oh, I need like a good 20, 30 minute meditation. During midday, I do like 5 to 7. And then in the evening, I do like the lying down meditation. And then I go to bed. It's my rest meditation. But when my running days, that first mile is my meditative mile. And, I really clear the head. I really think about what's going on. And that's, to me, that's my meditative path. So I try to meditate at least 2 to 3 times a day.
It's beautiful. And you know what they say, everything can be a meditation. Singing,
Hmm.
art, at anything. So, I mean, I would love for our listeners who perhaps don't meditate yet or who have been intimidated by that to understand that pretty much anything can be a meditation if you find peace within it, right? And
Hmm.
so it's just a beautiful practice to add in to, it
Yeah.
helps to manage anxiety and depression and all sorts of things. So definitely, if you're not meditating yet, look into it. It might help you. That's
It
all I'm
might, it
saying.
definitely, and it might, I'm telling you, there's so many, everybody's like, oh, but how do you clear your mind? I go, not every meditating is about clearing
No,
your mind.
not at all.
Sometimes the meditation is to actually listen to what you're saying to yourself,
Hmm.
to kind of gauge like where your feelings are. Like, are you really overthinking, or are you really just trying to connect to something that you just don't want to admit you want to connect to yourself with? And
Hmm.
that's,
Big
and
time.
everybody, and trust me, I've been accused of, oh God, Lucy, you're overthinking again. It's like, no, I'm not overthinking. Sometimes the overthinker is the one with the most compassionate heart, because we feel everything that's around us. We really feel it very passionately. So that's the way I kind of look at it. My overthinking is, again, I'm just feeling more than others want to feel. And again, I just gauge it that way. So again, is my meditation all the time about clearing everything? No, no, it's not. Sometimes I'm meditating because I need to gather myself. And one thing that I have to, it's interesting that we're talking about this, is because before I testified on the Hill, on July 29th, I was really just out of it. I was really nervous. And one of the people that were there supporting me, Lindsay Church from the Minority Veterans of America, she's the executive director. She goes to me, "Why are you so nervous?" I'm like, I'm nervous. Like, I can't believe I'm doing this. Like, why is it me? Blah, blah, blah. And she goes to me, Lucy, she goes to me, she goes, "Sit a minute." And she goes to me and she goes, "Organize your butterflies." And I go to
Ooh, that's
her,
powerful.
I'm like, "Excuse me?" And she goes, "Lucy, sit there." She goes, "And organize them, because your butterflies need organizing." And I was like, wow. And now it's like this thing that we all talk about, this mantra. And if it wasn't for Lindsay, she really set that tone that day for me, because it was a really, again, I never expected to get to that point. But it was definitely, she really put me in this monumental feeling of like, okay, organize them and you will go above and beyond. So,
Amazing. And I want to talk about that testimony. But
okay.
before we do, before we get there, I want to ask you about your advocacy. So, because we went through your healing process and what got you able to finally shift from being a veterans advocate to standing up for women who have experienced MST. So what was that journey like for you?
Ooh, that was a hell of a journey. Let me say that much.
I bet.
So when the Vanessa Guillen case started, when people started highlighting it on different newsreels, I tended to shy away from it. I was not really like, it would come on and I would either turn off the TV or lower the volume. I don't know. There was something that was very, just didn't feel right to me. I don't know if it was just, again, a trigger, but I was just really trying to stay away for it. So it was about midway into her case that a friend that I served with called me. And we have like these conversations quarterly, check on each other. How's our family? How's going on?
I love
And
that.
he called me up and he goes, "Hey, what's going on?" I go, "Nothing. Well, what's going on?" He goes, "Hey, I just want to check in on you." He goes to me, "I've been watching the news about this Vanessa Guillen case. I want to see how you're doing about it." And I said, "Yeah, I'm trying to stay away from it. It's a little bit triggering." And he goes to me, "Every time I see her face, I think of you."
Wow.
He goes, "It makes me think of 20-year-old Lucy." And I was like, crap, like, why do you have to say that to me?
Wow.
And that night, and you could ask my husband, that night I woke up my husband at like 3 o'clock in the morning, because my iPad was so like, the brightness of the iPad was so like
Hmm.
bright. He was like, "What are you doing up?" And I was like, I'm trying to catch up on this Vanessa Guillen. story. And I was looking up every single article I could read and see what's going on. And I was like, wow. So that next day was the first time I posted something about her case. So little by little, like once in a while, I would post something. But again, I was doing my New Jersey focused veteran advocacy about, trying to fight the VA because, in Jersey, we won't have a mammogram and we have all this, good stuff. But I was still trying to gear this whole Vanessa Guillen stuff. So they say on the news that they think they found her body, then they finally identify her body.
Yeah, I
And
remember.
another, a friend of mine who's in this space, woman advocate from another state, she calls me and she goes, hey, no, actually, she texted me. She goes in the text, hey, a group of women veterans are getting together on a call. Would you like to get on to it? We kind of want to roll up our sleeves and see how everybody's feeling. So I said, sure. So I joined the Zoom call. There's about 50 of us on the
I think I
Zoom
was
call,
there.
56, 60 of us on the
Yeah,
Zoom
I think I
call.
was on that call.
And then that started the grassroots coalition. We created the petition that went rampant on July 1st, July 4th weekend, and getting signatures. And then that's when I was like, wow, this is like a different side of advocacy that I've never seen, and I just really, that's where the momentum started. Then the July 21st action took place, and where we took the petition, we brought it to Congress, and Congress heard us, and we requested that congressional hearing. So that day was magnetic. There was like something like magic in the air. So we did the press conference earlier in the day, and then we did our first in front of the White House. We did our first rally, talking about military sexual trauma. While that was taking place, I got an email from the Military Personnel Committee saying, "Would you like to testify?" Based on what they saw me, because I the day of the press hearing at 10 a.m., that call to action, it was myself, it was Melissa Bryant, and it was Lindsay Church. So we all spoke. I spoke in Spanish and English. I shared a little bit of my story. So then that afternoon, they're like, Lucy, would you like to testify? And I was like, really? So then, I had to prepare my testimony and be back in DC a week later. So, I got a lot of help from really wonderful women organizers, Lindsay Church, Melissa Bryant, Pamela Heel, Stephanie Gatas, just a multitude of Erin Kirkhomo. They all got together, and it was like this feeling of like they are going to walk me through this. Because again, I had never even ventured or thought in my life that I would go up there and testify. And then a week later, I was in DC testifying, and wow, that was some journey. And I remember sitting there that day waiting. They put you in this room next to, the room where you testify. And I was sitting there with Melissa Bryant, who's done this before. It's like she's like, a rock star when it comes to the legislative arm. And I mean, she's just a powerful woman. So to be there with Melissa and to stand by her, two women of color, being there and sharing our stories was just magical. Lindsay was there as support for us. So again, Lindsay,
I got goosebumps.
she's testified a millions of times. So she was there to support us if we needed any type of, we needed to touch base, or, she needed to look something up. So she was there to give us, she was our support. But I remember sitting there and going like, oh my God, I can't believe it. And she was like, Lucy, you're going to be fine. So we were panel 2. Panel 1 was the Army IG and the DOD Sharp, who, thank God they were first, because they set this fire in me, because I was listening to them and just getting more and more agitated by their answers, their lack of response, their lack of any type of they were just not responding the way we wanted to hear them respond. So by the time I pressed that button to open my mic and start going, I was lit. I was on fire because I was
Just
so mad.
imagine.
So it was an interesting day. That 48 hours that I was in DC was just wow, I can't believe I just did this. You know what I mean? It was really just
It
an
must have been
interesting.
surreal.
Oh, so surreal. And then the next day, to see it, like, because the day I left DC, ABC interviewed me. So I was talking to them. They had me, like, kind of journal my story. And it was just, but then the next day we did the Vanessa Guillen march in DC. And that was even more powerful because we were there, her family was there. I hadn't met the family at that point. I didn't meet the family till September 16th when they actually did the bill introduction. But it was really just, again, a lot of passion, a lot of, like, it's been a very emotional journey. But I have to say, I'm glad I've been taking this ride. I really have.
That's amazing. So, I was able to see a lot of that stuff. I followed the story, of course. We all got incensed, I guess is the right word, when when we started to hear about this story. And I remember it was like late one night, and one of my previous guests, Kim Bailey, from Invisible Combat, she said, "Hey, take a look at this." And I looked at it, and then she said, something's going on at Fort Hood. She started sending me all these news articles, and I was started reading them, and I was like, "Oh my God, it sounds like what the truth is." I said, "It sounds like cartels." That's what I told her at the
Right.
time. I said, "It sounds like cartels. You should probably be careful, depending on how vocal you're going to get with this." This is exactly what I told her in a text. And then she started sending me the Vanessa stuff. And I said, "This feels different." And I'm like, "I don't know, but this is not good." And then it began to have momentum as we all start posting about it more and more, because we wanted people to know, right? To be
Mhm.
aware, because as a female veteran, which is again one of the reasons this podcast exists, is that people don't think of the females that are serving. We are so marginalized that it doesn't
Mhm.
even occur to them. So when one of us goes missing from a base, like, people just, it's not even on
Right.
anyone's radar. So
And that's when I said, if you watched a testimony and they Representative Escobar asked me, like, when did you start feeling like this connection? And I said, the minute a human being who went missing was not as important as a weapon went missing on base. If you know how it is. If something goes missing and they lock everybody down, nobody could leave. They're going to find that weapon. They're going
you
to
know
find
it.
that piece of supply, and they didn't have any value in her. And that to me was, like, disturbing because, again, they did not put. The minute they saw that her keys, her phone, her valuables were there, something should have clicked in them.
I mean, any person that saw the evidence the way it was
Mhm.
described should have
But
questioned what was going on
exactly.
there.
But it's interesting that you said about, like, when you thought about cartels. You see, I didn't see it that way. My brother, my elder brother, served in the army. He spent the majority of his career in Hood. And
Wow.
he started his family in Hood. My nephew, who passed away last year, grew up in that area. His mother still lives in that area. So for me, it was never, when I looked at it, I never saw it as a cartel issue. I saw it as a toxic leadership issue because, again, I knew that community because my brother was part of it. My brother loved his time in Texas. So again, for me, it was never that. Again, my family, my brother's ex, and my nephew, that's where he grew up, that's where he prospered. So for me, I never saw it in that lens. I saw it as I saw it as a military issue. I saw it as a toxic leadership issue. I saw it as a different way. And the minute I saw them say that she told her mother she was harassed, I was like, ding, 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 ding,
Oh,
ding.
for
This is gonna
sure.
this is gonna play out a different way. You
Oh,
know,
for
this
sure.
this is going to play out a different way. And that's, to me, how I saw it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm talking about more of like the prostitution ring and all the
Oh,
people going missing
yeah,
and all of that.
that's
But that being more than Vanessa's case, because it felt, like I said, it felt different to me. She
oh
sent me
yeah.
so many articles of all the crimes and disappearances and things going on. The first thing I thought was like, oh, there must be some sort of cartel thing going on there. And then because of where it is close to the border and everything like that, not too far from
Oh
Mexico
yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah.
But
There's
that
major accountability issues when it comes to a
but it
base
comes
that
back to leader
large.
but it comes back to leadership. Even
It
if it's
comes back to
cartel or
leadership.
not, there it comes
Yep.
back to the leadership,
To
like you said.
leadership. Yeah, it
But
comes back to
Vanessa's
the leadership.
case, I agree, completely different. And I felt in my bones the minute they were like, all of her stuff was found and all of that. I just got chills because I was like, this is not going to go well. Like I just knew, and then,
Mhm.
and as it played out, it went nearly exactly the way I thought it was going to go, maybe a slightly even worse,
Uh-huh.
So it
Yeah.
just, I think all of us felt that sense of rage. And if the one thing that I can say is that her family are so incredible, in my opinion, because if they didn't fight tooth and nail to get
Mhm.
visibility into this case, you would have never ended up testifying. Things
No,
would have never changed.
you know,
The leadership would still be there.
there was something about 2020 in the air that you
Hmm.
knew things that were taking place have gone in with a lot of significance. And this case truly highlighted that there was a lot of significance in what was going on. And for me it was, again, there was so many variables that connected me to this. I'm a military sexual trauma survivor. I'm a Latina. I know how it feels when you are like, you don't know what to say. You don't have a voice. And again, I watched, we all watched this family. Really, we watched the mother and the way she spoke. And even though she was speaking in Spanish, she got her point across, regardless of Spanish, English, whatever
Absolutely.
language she was going to say. A mother in pain is always going to get her point across. And that woman got her sisters, her, and it was just so dynamic the way it was just resonating with so many people. But then it created an even more bigger voice within our women veteran population. It just
Absolutely.
it opened wounds, but we found this like profound just way of saying enough is enough. Like you
Yes.
people have to see that this is taking place. And regardless if you want to admit it or not, and you don't want to accept it, that's your problem. But it's goddamn happening. And you have to realize that it's happening every single day. As we're talking right now, there's a woman getting harassed in the military. And that's
That's
and
right.
that's a god on. But it's not just a woman thing. you know and that's what I have to say. We saw Elder Fernandez's case.
Yes.
It's an issue. It's a military thing. And again, women, men, our LGBTQ community,
Yes.
it covers everybody. And that's the thing. Enough is enough. We have to change that type of toxicity in the military when it comes to harassment. Harassment should not be a workplace, occupational hazard. It shouldn't. It has to change. And if we don't do something about it, and again, I think we're really moving, we're seeing next steps. But what was really intriguing to me is when I started writing my testimony and I went back to the tailhook and I went back to the women who testified because I was able to speak to some of them. It's deep stuff, and how the military has still been able to not do anything. And it's like, again, if Diane Danis, she she's been fighting this fight for years. And why is it that she's still fighting this fight? Why is it that we're still trying to change? And it's like, why aren't they listening to us? And that's, again, it's toxic leadership. It's it's this
It's the
disconnect.
system. It's the
It's the
broken
system.
system
It's the broken system.
of justice within the military. For example, I interview women veterans of all ages and all times of service, right? So
Hmm.
I can guarantee you, I can interview a woman from the 70s, the 80s, probably even prior. I just haven't had one
Hmm.
yet. And I just interviewed a girl who got out of the military a year ago, all MST survivors. So
Mm-hmm.
we're talking about 30, 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just
It's
women.
not changing. But then also, but the men, it turns into, oh, but he was hazed. Hazing is assault. That's it. Point blank. And it's just, again, it's just so it it makes you cringe because, again, it shouldn't take place. We joined the military to become soldiers, to protect and serve, to create legacy. For a lot of us, it's a way of getting out of our situations. Like a lot of Latinos, first generation, they want to prosper. And the military gives us this precedence that that's what's going to happen. You don't join the military expecting that you're going to get assaulted. You don't join the military with the expectation of getting harassed. But
Or
for some
murdered.
of us, right, or murdered. But for some of us, that's what happens. And again, how it just continually allows to happen it's mind-boggling, and it's frustrating. But yet I feel like it's going to change. I really do. I really am. I'm really being hopeful. I'm being honest when I say I hope this moment continues to happen. It's not just a 30, 60, 90 type of situation. It's 120s and out. We have to change what's happening in the military so our military could be a safe place that people could actually do what they signed up to do and not worry about all the other things that you've seen in the media and that are playing out right now.
Absolutely. I mean, perfectly, perfectly said. I just absolutely always say that I don't know anyone who hasn't at least witnessed some type of bullying, sexual assault, racism, MST, like something, hazing, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's just it's you expect to go into the military and serve your country. You expect that there's a potential life hazard for that job, right? But you don't
Mm-hmm.
expect when you sign up, as a young woman or a young man, to go in and be assaulted by your brother at arms, or
Mm-hmm.
you don't
Or your sister, or your
or your
sister at
sister
arms. Because
at
again,
arms,
I
right?
yeah.
You don't expect these toxic behaviors within the ranks, right? You don't expect to have a friend end up dead or missing,
Mhm.
and the rumor is that it happened by someone who was stationed with you. Like,
Right.
this is not what you're signing up for. This is not what you're expecting. So this is not the environment that you should have to operate in.
Yep.
We should be safe to serve. That feels like a weird thing to say, but it's
Right.
true,
Yeah. No,
right?
I couldn't agree with you more. Again, you don't go into the military thinking that that's going to happen to you. And I sure didn't go into the military expecting that to happen. I joined the military because, again, I was trying to gain access to go to school, to go to college.
Mhm.
And that's
Too.
why I joined. And that's what a lot of us
Mhm.
join for. And again, so many things structurally have to change. The way our recruitment tactics when it comes to our Black and Brown and Latino communities. What are they actually? How are they enticing us to join the military? We really need to look at that. Um, there's just so many things that need to change: the leadership structure, the toxicity, the masculinity. There's just has to be something that we have to do and change to make it that we are not entering worrying about an occupational hazard that's potentially harassment or assault. And that's what we really need to do.
I agree with you. I agree with you. I like your vision. And I think that it's so super necessary. And I think, if we stick together and we keep making noise about it and we keep these conversations happening and going, then what can happen but change? It has to happen.
Yep.
It has to
Yep.
happen. You know,
Yep.
if we don't let it go away, if we don't let it die out, if we continue to band together, then we can make this
Oh,
change
definitely,
happen.
definitely. We have to change again. Right now it's calling your congressman, calling your senators, getting that act on the floor, getting it passed, because it's so important that we make those changes that need to take place. Again, there's so many things in the gamut that has to be looked at. Deborah Sampson, the Vanessa Guillen Act. There's so many things that we have to look at. There's still, there's still a lot of things that we have to look at in the military that we have to take care of. And we have to work together in order to make it a better place to serve.
Agreed. I absolutely agree with you. And I want to thank you so much for sharing that. I think it's about time that we wrap it up. So I only have two more questions for you.
Sure,
Okay, if
sure.
you don't mind. So
No,
appreciate your time.
absolutely. No
Okay.
problem.
So my next question for you is, what advice, after everything you've experienced, anything you shared with us, it could be about any of that. What advice would you give one of your veteran sisters coming up behind you?
Self care. Be kind to yourself because this is not easy work. It really isn't. Make sure that you are healed. Make sure that you are taking care of yourself before you try to deep dive into something like this. Because again, you are going to open wounds that you have worked so hard to kind of close, and they are going to rehash. So make sure, again, self care, self love, give yourself time, because like right now I'm giving myself time right now. I've worked so hard the last 80 some on days that I'm really unwinding right now, and looking at Lucy, taking care of Lucy. And that's what you have to do. You really need to take care of yourself before you're going to be effective.
Beautiful, beautiful advice. And that advocacy burnout is a real thing. It
Oh, girl,
is.
you have no idea. It is burned. I mean, it's like fried. I can't tell you. I'm not a sleeper. I usually give myself at least 5 hours of sleep. I've been sleeping for days, you know what I mean? Because again, I know that my body's telling me, like, Lucy, thank God you're like, giving yourself time, because trust me, your body, your mind is going to tell you you have to give yourself some time to heal.
Mm. And if you don't give yourself some time to heal, your body will make you
Oh,
have to
yes.
take the time off
Oh,
to heal.
totally, totally. It's gonna shut down some way. It's gonna shut down some way.
Right. So beautiful advice, advice that all of us can use, whether you're actively advocating, donating, that's maybe your way of advocating. There's so many ways to advocate, but whatever you're doing, self love first. Okay. Love
Yes,
yourself
self-love
first.
first.
Okay. That's
Yes, always love
beautiful
yourself
advice.
first. Yes, yes, love yourself first.
So, Lucy, tell me, what are you doing now? What can I share with everybody? How can
Well,
we
I'm
help?
I'm still advocating. I'm never going to stop advocating.
Of
Right
course.
now, in the next few about a week or so, I did some work with Senator Booker, Senator Cory Booker. We're doing some work on doula services for veterans in the VA system, which I think is very important. Again, part of the
Beautiful.
holistic practices that we're looking at. So
Hmm.
you'll see that we're introducing a bill to do a pilot on doula services. So that's up in the array. But I'm doing a lot of work with my sisters in arms, a lot of different veteran organizations that are truly near to my heart. I just became a program manager with the Minority Veterans of America, Lindsay Church's organization. They, again, if you haven't looked into minority veterans, please do so. The Pink Berets, Stephanie Gattaz is an absolute rock star. So anything with the Pink Berets, please, by all means, give them a lot of love. And then Pamela Heal is venturing out, and she's doing the Heal Network. And again, if you don't know who Pam Heal is, definitely go out and look for her. She is a rock star, and she's another one who can really give you a guide of passage when it comes to. And then, doing some work, there's Melissa Bryant, who again is always doing something, the Biden campaign, Women Veterans for Biden. Please, go out there and get your vote out. I can't stress enough, our vote right now is so important, and we need to really do that. And then, just doing my advocacy work here in New Jersey. And again, I'm on Instagram, and I'm Lady Del DJ, and on Twitter, the same handle, Lady Del DJ. And you could see what I'm up to right now. Again, a lot of it is a very loosey. So my cooking, my running is very prominent right now. So you'll see me doing loosey stuff, and being mom and spouse and stuff like that. But you'll see in the next few weeks, more advocacy stuff is on the horizon. So that's basically it. But just a lot of love to our women veterans out there doing their work. There's a lot of good organizations, our Sisters Keepers, different organizations that again are doing things in a multitude of levels, and give them a lot of love, show our support.
Absolutely. We're all about love at the Female
Yes.
Veterans Podcast. So anything that we can do and show some love to all of these amazing organizations, we got to do it. We got to do it
Yep.
because as the female veterans, we are our own best advocates. No one is going to advocate for us. We have to do it, you guys. We have to.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
let's show some love and support to all of these amazing organizations. And I want to thank you. Oh, let me just remind you that I will put all the links in the show description box in the show notes so that you can easily find them and support them in whatever way you feel comfortable doing. So that'll be there for you as well, as always. And Lucy, thank you so much for sharing time with me. It has been
Thank you.
incredible to finally connect with you and have a conversation. It's just been really incredible to hear your story and how brave and strong you are and how much of a warrior you really are, fighting for all of us, fighting for all of the women coming up behind you who are serving in the military and just doing all this amazing, beautiful work. Thank you for being
Thank
a
you.
guest.
Thank you very much. I truly, truly honored and humbled. I really appreciate this.
Thank you. And well, with that, we're going to wrap it up. So I want to just say to you guys, thank you so much for coming on this journey with me. It has been a crazy one thus far, and we're going to keep going with more incredible guests, more stories, and just kicking down the door and letting everybody know we're here, right? And just taking our place at the table. I guess that's what we're doing. And so thank you for listening. I appreciate you. I love you guys, and I'll talk to you next time.